Welcome to Picket Fence Studios. My name is Nicole Petersen, and I am here today at the Christmas in July Stamp and Scrapbook Expo special event, the virtual event, to teach you how to make this mixed media card. So we're going to start with a basic stencil. Now, stencils are one of the most versatile tools you can have in your arsenal of craft supplies. They're inexpensive and they can be used with a lot of different mediums. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to start off with a plain piece of watercolor paper. Now, I will tell you not all watercolor paper are the same. They're not equal to each other. So I do suggest that you use a pretty high quality watercolor paper that you can usually find at your local box store. So we're going to go ahead and get started. And what we're going to do is I already have a stencil. So I'm just going to take this candlelight stencil, which will be part of the kit that you can purchase after or during this event or even a week after. But we are going to use a medium that we created called paper glaze. Now, paper glaze is a creamy, smooth glaze that is meant to be added to paper for shine, shape, and texture. It actually is made here in the U.S. in South Louisiana, and it is water-based and it dries extremely fast, which is one of the #1 qualities I wanted when it was created. Now, this one is called Snowdrop White. And you will get 2 full ounces. I have a little missing out of mine. 2 complete ounces of your paper glaze color that you choose. This one we have is called Snowdrop White, which is what we're going to use today. Now this does dry white, a pearlescent white. So let me show you. This is what it looks like once it's dry. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and take our paper glaze and a spatula, doesn't matter what type, and we're going to go ahead and get started. Now, we're just going to grab some paper glaze and just smooth it over the stencil. Now, I really believe that this is one of those things that you just need to get it done. You know, we all worry about, oh, I'm going to mess it up and, anxious about it. However, I find that if I mess with it too much, that's when I mess up. So I'm just going to smear the paper glaze, the Snowdrop White paper glaze, over my stencil. I'm not going to play with it too much because that's always when I mess up. Now, I know someone's going to want to ask, what about thickness, Nicole? Well, to be honest with you, do whatever thickness you like. The thicker it is, the longer it takes to dry, but it really does dry pretty quickly. So when I lift this up, I'm actually going to hand my stencil to my lovely assistant who's going to immediately go and wash my spatula and my stencil. Now, I will show you something that I have figured out, that if I actually hold my paper up and just take my stencil off, I am extremely less likely to make a mistake by moving my paper glaze and shifting something on my piece of paper. So I'm gonna hand this to my lovely assistant who's going to take this and go wash it off in the sink with just some warm water. You don't even need soap. So here we go with our stenciled image of candles. Now this is a stencil specifically by us, Picket Fence Studios, and it is called Candlelight. Now with the magic of video and television, I have one completely dry, so I'm going to take this one off. I will give you a little view. Hopefully you can see the shine and the thickness of it. So this is Snowdrop White. I'm going to put this one to the side, and I'm going to take one that I have dry. Now, I did this, and you can see it's completely dry about 2 hours ago. But again, I live in South Louisiana, and we have a lot of humidity, and paper glaze dries really fast here. Now, I do want to show you, we do have other colors of paper glaze. This is the one called Golden Rose. And if you see, it's the same stencil, and I just pushed the gold paper glaze through it instead of white. But we're going to go ahead and get started on watercoloring. Now, I am a true believer of having fun when you watercolor. I try not to be too much of a perfectionist when I'm doing it because it's just meant to be relaxing and fun. So we actually are going to be using Picket Fence Studios watercolors. I'm going to put this out. Now, what I've done is this is a little palette. It is ceramic. It doesn't have to be ceramic. You can even use a paper plate if you like, or a plastic plate. So in your kit, you're going to get 3 colors of watercolor. So you're going to get red. Now you will have them in really nice dropper bottles, not these. This has been such a new product. We didn't have time yet to get our dropper bottles in, but you will have them. So you will get red, you will get green, and you get 2 more colors. One of them will be gold, okay? And then if you see right here, I have some yellow. So you're going to get 4 watercolors. You're going to get yellow, red, Christmas green, and a gold. So what we're gonna start off with is I have 2 little pots here of water, clean water, and I've already added watercolor to my palettes. So by doing this many times, you know, making sure it's all right and I understand how to do it, I have come to decide that the first color we need to start with is actually going to be the yellow, okay? Now, this is the yellow right here, and I just dipped my brush in it, and I'm just going to get my little ceramic palette wet. Now this is yellow also, but I have some green mixed with it, and we'll get to that later. But this is the yellow we're going to use. So I'm just going to go ahead and wet my palette right here a little bit. Now I've decided I want to have yellow, this is just water, yellow all within this area. Move my water closer. So all of this area of the candle and outside the candle, a little bit coming down here, is where I want my yellow to be. So I'm going to wet this area first, okay? Because I want to start with my yellow. So I'm just wetting this. Now I'm going to come and dip into my yellow watercolor, get a little bit this. I love this palette because you can put the watercolor here and make all kind of messes right there. And I'm just going to come in, and if you see, I'm just going to drop the watercolor down. Now I don't want to put too much water because water dilutes watercolor. So I do want to just make sure that I'm having as much true straight watercolor as possible. And I want all of this to be yellow. Now, of course, you can start with whatever color you like. However, I did find that starting with the yellow kept the integrity of the yellow color, and I didn't lose it as much when I added the red and the green and the gold. So that's about how much yellow I would like to add. Come in here and just touch it up. And you see how easy this is? It's okay if a little of it gets on the white paper glaze, not a big deal. So we're just coming in here and adding a little yellow. And you can always go back after something has been watercolored, after it dries, and add more color. So now what we're going to do, I'm gonna give you another glance of the photo. So if you look, I've added the of the card. See where the yellow is? So now I'm going to go back and add red. So here's the red, and this red is so new, I haven't even named it yet. How about that? This red watercolor. So I'm going to get my watercolor nice and going right here. And I'm going to dip my brush in and get it a little wet, add a little water. And you know, when it comes to what I'm doing right here with this watercolor, this is to preference. Everyone that uses watercolor always has, you know, specific ways they like to prepare their paper, but this is just how I like to do it. So I'm coming in here, and look, just my water is tinted red. So I don't mind a little dirty water because this is where it's going to be red anyway. So I'm just coming and wetting my paper. Now you could add this watercolor dry brush, just directly with a dry brush into the watercolor. However, watercolor, because it has that color name water in it, I find that it does much better if I wet my paper with this technique. So now I'm going to come in and get some red on my brush. And look at that. Whoa, I love watercolor, how it just spreads like that. It's so much fun. And I'm just going to come in here, and I am going to allow it to mix with the yellow. And I'm going to continue to add my red. Now, I am going to go quite far into the distance, you could say, of the outer card, because this type of card I find I don't very often get a perfect A2 size card. Sometimes I end up with, you know, a card a little bit bigger than the A2 size because I want to save a spot that I particularly like in how my watercolor came out on a project. So I'm more likely for this type of card to not have an A2 size card. So I'm just going to come add some more water down here to get this to flow. And I really like the way the red is flowing to the yellow right there. That looks good. Now we don't want our card, since we have 3 colors, we don't want our card to look like it's boom red, then yellow, and then green. So you see how we have a little yellow extending this way? That's good, that's perfect. So now I'm going to come into the green. Now this is where you're going to have an option. The reason why I have 2 spots of yellow here is this is the green, and this is the green that you're going to get. It's a beautiful hue of green. However, I find it has a little touch of blue in it, which is actually my favorite color of green. But I wanted it to be a little bit greener or Christmassier or a little bit limer. So what I did is I put, this is just yellow, the same yellow. And I took the yellow and mixed a little bit of the green. And just by mixing a little, it's okay if it gets green in there, just a little bit of this green with the yellow, it automatically just took it and added it back to life, like added some color, more of a yellow tone to the green, which is what I wanted. And this is like to taste. You know, you always want to test out your watercolors before you use them. So if you prefer the bluish, it is a true green, but it has a hue of blue underneath it. So if you like that blue green, then don't add any yellow. But if you want more of a limey, Christmassy color green, then I would go ahead and add some yellow to the green that you receive from your kit. So I'm going to rinse my brush, and I'm going to come down and I'm going to start adding water where I want my green to go. So all in here. Now this is the type of mixed media project that you can do very cleanly, meaning that it doesn't have to have a lot of combination of color because it's under your control, or you can go wild and have the colors really mixed together. That's kind of a myth with mixed medias. A lot of people think that it just has to be dirty and like brown and grimy looking. It really, but it doesn't have to be. It could be whatever color combinations that you like. It's just all about how much grunge you want to put into it. And here we're not going to add any brown at all. We're just going to let the colors blend and make the colors they come up with. So I'm going to come in here and take some of this green. Take this green and I'm going to come and drop it in. Now I did find, and in a minute I'll show you guys some samples, that I didn't like the green getting too close to my yellow candles. I found that one of the samples that I made, the green got into the crevices right next to the yellow candles, and I just didn't prefer that. So I'm going to attempt to put my green in the area that's left and not get too much of it next to the yellowish part of the candles. But again, it's all to taste. Now you see here, I dipped directly into the blue, the green spot without any yellow. You see how blue-green it is? But now I'm just going to come in with a little bit more yellow, and I'm going to mix it directly onto my palette like this, onto the paper. Watercolor, so I love watercolor. It's just, there's no real rules to it, like with other types of mediums. With art, you can just play with it and let it go and blend. Make it darker, make it lighter, whatever you like. Now, in this area right in here, I find that we need a little bit more water. So it is going to make a little bit of brown, but that's okay. We are going to add more color. And I'm going to come in with red and just drop some red in all right here. Kind of tone down that brown with some beautiful red. I'm going to come add some more red down here. And remember, once this is dry, you can always go back and put a second coating of the color if you want it to be more vibrant. The first time you put watercolor down, it's really meant to just get the color down, and then you always go back after and add more details or more color if you like. All right. Make sure we got all that covered. Now my yellow seems to be a little too yellowy here, so I'm just gonna come in and dilute a little bit of that green and add some more in here. There we go. And you know, this is the type of project that is different every single time. Come back tomorrow and who knows what color I'll put where. All right, so now we just have, I'm gonna move this red around. Just get some red over here. I'm really liking the blue area right here. Okay, I'm gonna add a little bit more yellow. Now there is a point where you have to just stop. I think I'm getting to that point where you just have to make yourself back away and allow the watercolor to work on its own, which is a hard thing to do. A really hard thing to do. I am adding more water, and I'm adding directly from my dirty water, by the way, which is fine. Okay, so from this point, I'm gonna back away from it and I'm going to add gold on top. So I'm gonna move the palette out the way. And this is the gold that you're also going to receive in your kits. So I'm going to dip my brush in here and it's very wet. So I'm gonna come and I'm just gonna add gold everywhere. Everywhere that I see, I'm just going to add gold on top. Now, another quick way you can do this is allow this to dry, okay? And then take like a cookie sheet and pour your gold, some of your gold paint in the cookie sheet or a craft sheet, and then dip the entire card front just into the gold. Add a little water to the gold and dip your card front into it. I clean my brush off every once in a while. Make sure I'm not getting those colors, oops, too diluted like that. It's okay. All right. Now, if you're really wild, you can even just pour some gold. Now, this is watercolor, if I didn't say that. So you are going to receive 4 colors of watercolor: green, red, gold, and yellow. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop with adding color and I'm going to allow this to dry organically. And what I mean by that is I could just grab a heat gun and heat set this and then move on and add a second layer to it, which would be no problem. However, when watercolor is allowed to dry organically, it's going to give you a much more blended look like what you see here, okay? So what you see here is I did the same exact process, but I did go back a second time and add more red and green, yellow and gold to it. So it's a 2-coat process. So from here, I'm going to hand this off to my lovely assistant and allow this to dry. Okay, and I'm going to then grab one that is already done. Okay, so here I have one that is allowed to dry overnight, and then I went and put a second coat of the watercolors and then let it dry again. So now, and then I did cut it down into a A2 card size. So it's 5.5 by 4 1/4. So I'm going to take my Misty and we're going to stamp a sentiment. Now we are going to use I believe in having things stick. We are going to go ahead and use our black hybrid ink on this watercolor front. Now the reason why I love hybrid ink is because it allows you to stamp on top of things that have been like watercolored, or watercolor pencils or Copic markers. You can stamp it on top of dye ink and pigment ink. It does a lot of, it allows you to stamp on top of projects where normally you would have to have a specific type of ink, and you know, you end up having 20 different types of black ink. But we're going to be using Picket Fence Studios Intense Black Hybrid Ink. And like I said, you can use this on top of watercolor, on top of watercolor pencils, on top of regular pencils, Copic markers, dye-based ink, pigment ink. It pretty much takes the place of all your black inks except StazOn. StazOn, you still need that StazOn to go onto plastic, metal, and glass. So you're going to receive this sentiment set in your kit. Now guys, this is a set that has not been released yet. It's actually part of our August release. So you're going to get it in your bundle, and you're going to get all the different sayings. And this is called Fancy Christmas Sentiments, and it's C-114. So you get this set in your kit. So we're just going to pick a sentiment to stamp. Let's see. That looks good. Peace on Earth. Okay. Place it in my stamping platform. Make sure you move all your water out the way. And I'm going to ink it up with our black hybrid ink. Now this ink will stay and dry on top of paper glaze, so we're good there. So we're going to go ahead and close it. You do want to close it and not drop it. So there's one. And here's two. I always like to stamp things at least twice, sometimes even 3 times, because you know, if you can do it perfectly, why not? So we have our Peace on Earth stamped in our Misty, and I have some samples for you guys that I want to show you. This is the card that I showed you before in the very beginning. Then I did go ahead, and we have other colors of paper glaze. So here is the stencil in gold, which is called Golden Rose Paper Glaze. Then here are some other card fronts that I made that I wanted to show you guys. So here's one where I did the same exact process, except I didn't add a lot of green. I added a lot of red and yellow, and you know, red and yellow will make orange, right? And then after it was done, I was just kind of like, not really loving it so much. So I decided I was going to flick it with drops. So I just took my paintbrush and I dipped it in green and just like made flicks all over it with green, some red, yellow, and then I just misted it with water and just put it to the side and let it dry. Came out pretty good for just, you know, something I wasn't in love with. Here is the gold paper glaze with our Christmas green watercolor, and you can see I first came in and I did all the yellow on the inside, and then I came back with green. And you can see it's giving you a little bit of that bluish hue underneath our Christmas green. And then also mixed with the yellow gives you a little bit more lime. And then here's another one. This one, I think I went a little wild and crazy with this one, because if you look in here, there's a whole lot of green in it, all in here. And I also, if you notice, my stencil is not it's not in the very middle of my card. And that's because when I trimmed my card down, I decided I really liked the way the red and the gold and the green dried on this side, and I wasn't loving this side so much. So I purposely, when I trimmed it down, left the part of the card that I preferred and trimmed off some of it that I didn't like. That's always a reason why I always start with a larger piece of paper than what my card front is going to be. Because that way, if I like on this card, what's happening over here, but I'm not in love with this side, I can always just take my paper trimmer and trim it down. So it's all good. So let me show you real quick and what's going to be part of your kit. You are going to receive this stamp set. It has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 sentiments. You're going to receive it's 4 jars of watercolor because you have a jar of yellow. Yours are going to come in droplet bottles. And you're going to receive an entire jar of Snowdrop White paper glaze, plus you're going to receive one of our special sequence mixes in the beautiful case that everybody loves. All right, so if you notice, you will have all these different things in your kit. The only thing you really need to add to your kit is watercolor paper. Now, we do have another Christmas sentiment set that came out. Actually, it's already been released. This is called the inside of Christmas cards. So these are sentiments that you would put on the inside of your card. So they're smaller, where you have room to write a special message. So that's it. I hope you guys have a Merry Christmas. And in July, right? I'm sure we'll see you again before Christmas rolls around. But Merry Christmas and Happy New Year from Picket Fence Studios. Bye.